And we are live. Excellent.
We are live, indeed.
And
Welcome.
24/7 is live as well. 24/7. Yeah, like 24/7, keeping you in flow. So hey, my name is Joonas Lehtinen. I'm the founder of Vaadin, working mostly on product nowadays.
Yeah, I'm Leif. I'm a long-time architect, developer, product manager, everything.
And I'm Mark. I'm product strategist and longtime Vaadiner. I'm here as the product manager for Copilot.
And my name is Mika Andersson. I'm a product marketing manager here at Vaadin. And with this, I welcome all you to this live stream webinar. We are going to go through the Vaadin 24.7 release. We've got some really exciting new features, announcements, and tools to be covered in this session. And with that, I also welcome you all to share your questions, any questions you might have using the YouTube chat box. And we try our best to address those questions during the webinar. If there are some really tough questions, we might push those till the end of the webinar, but we really do our best to keep the conversation flowing and address those questions as we go. Briefly about the agenda. We will start with the control center. Joonas will tell us some exciting news about control center. That will be continued by Leif on the framework, Hilla, flow. And then we'll hear from Joonas about the design system, latest additions to that. And Mark will explain what's going on with the Copilot. And I will conclude with the modernization toolkit. And as it was mentioned, we will also have the opportunity for questions and answers after the presentation if there are such tough questions that we are not able to address those during this session.
Yeah, but please kind of submit questions as we go, so we try to answer them in there. I'll add one more point in there. So we're going to try to keep the control center, design system, and modernization toolkit section super short. So we have a separate webinars coming up on all those three. So just kind of mentioning the highlights for those three, and then we can have a bit more time for frameworks and Copilot.
Yes, absolutely. So without further ado, let's get into the control center, shall we?
Yeah, so the big news is that this is finally GA. Yay! So we have been for a long while thinking, how could we make it easier to deploy Vaadin applications and how to do it in a way that is real, not just like good for a hobby project, but actually would be working for production. And this has been taking a while. We started building this on top of the Kubernetes, and we are really happy with that choice. So it basically makes it easy for you to, or easier to deploy your Vaadin applications in production in any cluster that supports Kubernetes. So that's the big news. There is two main functionalities in this. One is the deployment itself. How do you deploy and run your application? The second one is user management. So how do we kind of basically out of the box bring you ways to log in with various ways and control the users and so forth. There is third thing that is localization. So this is supporting the full stack chain of localization. So we have built-in localization in both frameworks, and then in Copilot we have tooling for it. And now in Control Center also we have ways for professional translators to join in and translate to different languages. But I guess the big news is that the Control Center is finally GA. I hope you all try it out. And just to mention, it is free. There are some features that are commercial, but most of it is free. Maybe, Mika, you could kind of share my screen so I can kind of give a glimpse of that. I'm not going to be giving a full demo. We'll have a webinar together with Mark Heckler from Microsoft later on, I think somewhere mid to late April, showing how you can use Azure Cloud with Vaadin, but obviously it works with any cloud that you want. So, could you share my screen?
I am actually trying to, just a second.
And here we have it.
There we go.
All right, so this is the control center. Now I have just one example application deployed in there. So as you can see, we can have identity management in there. Let me log back in. All the things that you should be doing live.
As you can see, it's very secure.
Just kind of having a glimpse of an application, you can see how many servers it's running on, users, all kind of stuff in there. There's identity management, localization. It's not enabled for this application. And just going to mention a couple of things in here. First off, how do you get here? The first one is easy. You hop on the documentation and you look at the getting started. And we truly simplified this to only one command. So you run this Helm command, and with that, it does everything to install the control center. So with that, you'll get to the control center. In here, you can go to settings and start deploying new applications. And if I choose this one that is already deployed, it basically deploys those from Docker images. You can pull them from local container repository or whichever repository you want to. We just added in this release a way to add environment variables for configuring like API keys and whatnot in here. The really cool thing is that when you add your domain name in here, this actually goes and automatically creates those names with your name server. So let me show from here. If I look for DNS in the documentation, we have it's using this project behind the scenes that supports a really long list of different clouds where it can support DNS configuration in all those clouds. So if you create a new deploy a new application, it actually goes there and creates new names for that as well. Not just that, it generates certificates, so it can generate self-signed certificates for your test use, but it also can use external certificate service to, for free, create you a production certificate, and it even automatically refreshes that certificates every few months, so you never have to be worrying about the certificates. For the identity management, you just kind of turn it on, and after that you can manage identities in there. Let me choose the application from here and go and have myself in here. You can nowadays also turn on passwordless authentication, so basically passkeys. So your phone can read your face or fingerprint, or your headset can read your retina and use that for authentication. If that's too fancy, there's also multi-factor authentication. So it generates those QR codes that you can read in your kind of a second factor OTP app, or you can just use passwords. And there's all kinds of role group management. We can also add third-party providers for authentication, or any like enterprise identity manager as well.
I could also mention that all of the authentication uses the open source Keycloak tool behind the scenes, so it's really industrial grade security here.
Yeah, we are kind of really standing on the shoulder of giants. So this is Control Center tries to minimize what we build and use Kubernetes, Postgres, Keycloak as infrastructure, so that we build on known PCs, and that kind of gives you robustness, but it also gives you endless ways to customize this. So if some feature is missing from Control Center, you can always go through this surface and configure anything you want directly on the Kubernetes cluster. Anyways, that's the Control Center. Any questions on we see in the comments?
Not for now. We've got a shy audience at the moment.
All right. I hope you have many questions in a bit, and after you try it out, share those questions on forums, and we try to help. This is still early beginning for the control center, so we are excited to add tons and tons of feature here in future. I think we can hop over these. I think we pretty much went through them.
Yeah. So then to the frameworks, if you can get my screen visible there. While waiting for that, could just mention that in all of these sections, there's no way we can talk about all the things that are new. So we just pick some highlights and go and read through the release notes to get all the things. So yeah, what have we done in the frameworks? Let's start with some flow features. One thing to definitely mention is what we call the resilient communication. So nowadays, Flow can keep track of what was the previous sent message, and if there's a network issue, it can resend that same message again over the network instead of kind of restarting from scratch. So this is something you won't see any APIs for. There's nothing visible about it. It's just kind of less complaints from users in case they have a flaky network connection or anything like that. To highlight this, I have a very flaky network connection because I'm running through an HTTP SSH tunnel that I can kill at any time. So just to kind of show one example of how this works, I got this populate button that now happens to be a little bit slow. And let's see what happens if the network connection, or if I kill the tunnel while this is ongoing. And that's the wrong keyboard. There we go. So connection lost, trying to reconnect, and then immediately when I open the connection again, it automatically resynchronizes everything. And this kind of used to work previously, but now it's much smoother and less disruptive. And there are more cases that can actually be handled gracefully.
So what type of cases this will be useful?
Whenever, basically the thing that is problematic is if things go bad while an HTTP request is handled. So for instance, while that happens, if you happen to drive through a tunnel if you're going by train, or if you switch Wi-Fi's or start VPN or something at the bad moment, or then just if you have a flaky network connection, so it just drops out and comes back, all those kinds of situations for the end users will work much smoother now.
Yeah, some of the trickiest cases we have seen from customers is that when their enterprise customers have some really strange routing infrastructure and firewalls and whatnot, they might be completely impossible to debug. So this should be kind of resolving all of those automatically when we are able to more robustly reconnect.
Yeah, and actually speaking of infrastructure, we got updated documentation. Did I actually select that? Yes. So for how to configure Vaadin applications, most focus on Flow, but it also applies for Hilla. So how to configure these to work behind the most common reverse proxies. So we got one section for HTTPD with kind of the exact examples of the exact configuration options you need, and one for Nginx, and then, like you see in the outline, separate sections for WebSockets and all the kind of practical things that are needed there. So that's something that might be very useful also. Next thing I want to show is Quarkus. So we added native build support for Quarkus. Actually doing that native build is a little bit slow, so I did that ahead of time. It took me 1 minute on this quite fast machine. And what that actually did is that it created in the target folder an 88 megabyte big executable. And now when I just run this, I mean, to do this, like you see, it's just MVM package, and then you add this one additional Quarkus package type native flag. But to actually run it, when I run it, it's almost instant starting up. It says that this was the port it's running on, so let's just see that it works. So here we now have this very simple Quarkus application just to show that this is indeed working. Next thing on the list for flow improvements, the final thing actually on this list, on my list for today, is how you get data into grids or combo boxes when you want to lazy load them. So this is the old way of doing things. We get this Vaadin data provider query, and then we use a helper to convert that into a Spring pageable, and then we actually call our service with that pageable, and then we return that. But now we also added grid.set items based on a pageable. So with that, we can, in many cases, it basically receives a pageable and returns a list of items. So we can, in many cases, just do persons, : list, and that's all there is. Of course, if you want to do some filter or something, you need to actually expand this into, why can't I do this anymore? Well, you need to expand this into an actual lambda and so on, but these two parts here are now equivalent. That was the flow things. Let's proceed to some Hilla stuff. And actually, we have exactly the same thing for Hilla also, with making it easier to hook up lazy data to grids and combo boxes. So I've got a grid configured here, but there's no data for it yet. So I'm gonna do use grid data provider is a new helper that we have added. There's also one use combo box data provider, because actually let's look at that first. When I want to give a data provider here, it's this thing that receives a whole bunch of things, and it's kind of a little bit tricky to use, especially in a React context. So that's why we provide this hook, and here I can now just give a grid fetch method. So in a simple case, that's just some method from my service, as long as it takes the right parameter type. This is my data, and then I can set this as the data provider, and there we have this same data lazy loaded now from the service. More things for Hilla. Let's see. Yeah, we got this button. It's a really good button. It shows a notification, waits for a slow request taking 3 seconds to the server, and then it says that this was handled. So now when I click this, notice here in the upper edge of the screen there will be this typical Vaadin progress indicator that you always see. And in most cases that's what you want. But if you, for instance, doing some background synchronizing or something like that, then you don't want to show that. So now there's an option of saying for any Hilla endpoint request that you make, say that this is mute, and now when I click this button, the notification is there, but there's no progress indicator. And then once it's done, then it's done just as before. What else is there? Yep, we got uploading. So, I mean, adding an upload component, that's the easy part. But it gets a little bit tricky when you also want to upload files to a server. We have now improved this. We still need to do a little bit for the actual upload component. We have mostly focused on the server side. So I need to copy paste a little snippet from the documentation here, just so to see that I'm not cheating. So here we have this. This part should really be shortened, but for now it's this long. We plan to have it hopefully next release shorter, not return now. And then I need this handler. So what this does is lots of boilerplate stuff, and here in the middle is the essential thing where it just calls some service. We're going to build our own service to receive uploads. So in this Hilla service, when I also had this list request and the slow thing, I'm going to add a new one, public string handle file, and then it receives a multi-part file parameter. That's a type from Spring, so we're just reusing that. So what I can do here is, well, let's return something, return, and in this person service, I also have an analyzer. So let's use that. And like we see, what we get from this multi-part file is we get direct access to the bytes actually that were uploaded, an input stream to read from some metadata with the file name and so on, and also helpers to directly copy this data to the file system if you want that. In this case, let's just take the bytes and send them out like this. I need to also handle that exception. And now here, let's just copy paste this part. Now we have in our Hilla service, we got a handle file generated method. It takes a file object, which is the browser native way of handling uploads. For instance, you can get that from upload components or from other places. So now with that, I can actually upload a file. So when I upload this example file, we get a notification with the analysis results from the server, because as we see, what this does is that it calls this service method, gets, well, copy pasted it as a file ID, and then it just shows a notification with received file and that value. Those were some new features that we have added to Flow and Hilla in Vaadin 24/7. So now I guess it's up to any questions, if there are things that people wondered about these things.
So as you can see, this is a bit of a continuation of this Snow Reindeer release, where we wanted to kind of find all the nitty-gritty small details where we can improve. So hopefully these are helpful, even though none of the features by themselves is like a huge, splashy, big thing.
Yep.
All right, should we jump on the next one while people are possibly looking for questions? And feel free to ask not just about this feature, but also about roadmap, or if you have any wishes, share those. Could you actually let me take over the screen. So the design system, we have multiple things. I'll just kind of highlight three. The simplest one that is probably like a most impactful thing is like the fundamental thing in horizontal layouts. Some things are not easy. So when you're doing a like header like this, it's surprisingly hard to get your components laid out like this. Like have those A and B on the left and D and E on the right. So if you just kind of add these to horizontal layout, what you get is this, and this is not what you want. And then what would be easy to add just like a justification in there, and that's not what you want either. So the outcome is that many applications look bad for wrong reason. They kind of have used the wrong layout. So what you can do is like start wrapping stuff, and it's not really the kind of the cleanest looking code nor the cleanest looking DOM either. So a bit better solution would be to be a CSS wizard and know that, hey, you can add auto margins to this middle element, but it kind of breaks the whole abstraction in there. So what we did add is the right way to do it. So now there is just a clean method for adding to start, middle, and end, and it takes care of all the nitty-gritty for you. Could you make me share my screen? I'll show another one that is probably my favorite. It's a small thing, but it's a small thing that people has been waiting for a long time. So let's find our new card component in here.
Oh yeah.
This is cool. I mean, this is so simple that we for many years postponed, and nobody needs this. This is just a kind of so simple and trivial to do yourself that we don't need to provide a component for this, and we were plain wrong. So if you ever need to have a card in your UI, as pretty much every application needs, laying out a cool looking card is not really simple. So you can play around this in documentation, like what if I don't have an image at all, or if the image would be like an avatar or some kind of SVG embedded in there. How would that look like? Or if I take the image back, how about this is not like covering the whole thing, but it would be just a small card in there, or maybe we should stretch that or what happens if we want to have the cards in the horizontal manner? And if that's the case, what happens if we want to have their like avatar instead, and how should you lay out? So there's so much kind of design decisions that kind of go into this kind of a small card thingy that can have many of these things, and it can become like overly simple or overly complicated. So I highly encourage to try this out in your applications. It's kind of elevates the elevates your application look and feel quite a bit by using this card, and kind of gives this nice design element in there. So that's the good news. The bad news is that we don't have Flow API for this yet. This is first now shipped with Hilla apps, and you'll get the Flow API in 24.8. So it's coming up really soon now, and I think the betas will be rolling out fairly soon as well. So you can take a look of those there. One more really cool component is a monster. So we finally added Gantt charts in there. So this kind of full Gantt chart in there. The cool thing, I mean, this is useful for many applications. The cool thing is that there is so many features in there. So let's say if we want to have like a progress indicators in there, you can have those, or we can have like dependencies in there, or we can even go all in and make this editable. So you can start drag and dropping these or resizing, and you can also include scaling and scrolling and ranges, and there is so many features in this Gantt chart that it's like a framework of its own. So if you need a Gantt chart, now you have it. That's a pretty cool thing in there. There are many other features in Design System in 24/7, but we'll have a separate webinar about those. Rolf will be, I guess it's Rolf and Mika, you two, who will be showing.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. We'll air the webinar in 2 weeks, so it'll be in April the 9th. So fairly soon, and we'll have a deep dive into pretty much most of the key deliverables in this area for or across all the 24.x releases up until 24.7.
Yeah. Curtis is asking if the card is still in preview. Now it's in its GA, so that's available. Come again?
You need to enable the preview flag, and there might be some changes, even though the main thing that is missing is just the Flow API.
Yeah, you're right. So we kind of, I mean, it's ready, but because the Flow API is missing, we want to keep it in there. But feel free to start using it for Hilla for now, and hopefully have the Flow API soon in there as well. Dominic, you are asking about the Gantt chart. This is fully integrated with the rest of the charting library in there. So hopefully this is helpful for you. Nathan is asking about testing. Really good question. I don't know whether we have a good answer. So we have been thinking testing quite a bit, and we haven't really concluded anything that final. So we want to make testing more open. We want to double down on unit testings, the Caribou style unit tests in there, and those are already kind of integrated in Vaadin test bench. But at the same time, we would like to utilize the Copilot tooling more, because it can provide you help when doing tests, and there is already this AI test button that generates the whole test for you. So that's kind of a pretty cool expansion of that. But frankly, I think our kind of thinking how all of these are connected together in a cohesive way is still evolving. Like, do you want to add anything to that, as you have been thinking this?
I think you covered it all already. Maybe one thing to emphasize, which is also what what Nathan here is doing is that he prefers to do kind of unit test level, so not going through the browser, and that's also one of the things that we suspect should be more prominent, because I mean it's the test pyramid with the slower tests are, you don't have so many of them, and tests going through the browser is definitely on the slower end. So we want to somehow optimize that, but we're still kind of thinking how to make everything fit together.
Yeah, one of the kind of things that we have been poking around a bit is Playwright, how that could contribute to the testing story, and actually the Copilot testing button that generates Playwright tests at the moment. So I think our problem is not like a lack of testing tooling. Our problem might be that we have maybe too many ways of testing. It would be good to make it more cohesive, or at least give good recommendations on what's the best way.
And maybe a quick note on testing. We just aired a webinar on generating UI tests with help of AI together with Manalo a few weeks back. So it's also available if you're interested in this topic.
Yep. And then I see a completely new topic, question from Victor's about Hilla and Quarkus integration. So there's no news there. We still really want to build out all the things we have imagined for the Spring Boot integration with Hilla first. And then once that's done, then we start evaluating, should we go Quarkus route, should we go Angular route, should we go this and that route. But first we want to really focus on just one set of technologies instead of going really wide there.
Cool. Looks like we've gone through all the open questions so far. So shall we move on? Copilot, Mark.
Yeah, let's. And if you can share my.
Yes. There we go.
My screen here. I'm gonna just rearrange and see that we're still up and running. Yes. Yes. So this is my small demo application I'm using today, and it has a login. So we're not logged in right now. This is a public view. And the first thing I want to show that we have added is that we have this impersonation feature. So it uses Spring Security, and I can kind of bypass authentication. So what you do is you type in a username, and in my case, it's remembering a few. So if I choose myself, it will, without me having to log in and log back out again, I'm now Mark, and I can, in the same way, I can change to a different user that has different permissions, and you can see the menu changing. So that's quite convenient when you are developing, to make sure that you have the right access to the right things, but also kind of yeah, you can use it for interesting things like creating a user in your development environment that doesn't actually have a password, so you can log in, but in development you can bypass that, but with no risk to kind of deploying anything.
Yeah, so one thing to mention here is that this is a huge security hole. It's very convenient for production,
yes.
But don't run in development mode in production. Though there's also some safeguards here, if I remember right, like this only works on localhost and so on.
So you don't run localhost on production.
Yeah.
The one thing to mention. Go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So one thing. Why did we do this? Is that now when with the control center you get pretty much authentication and login for free, it kind of left a fairly challenging development story where if you don't implement any kind of login in your application and you just trust the control center brings that for free for you. So this kind of fills that hole. So on the development side, you get to use this for testing the login, and then when you go to production, then control center can provide all the login for free for your application. So these kind of work together.
And not just testing the login, but also like testing any kinds of role-based features, like where you have different views based on your role. So this is super handy.
Exactly. Yeah, you can quickly check that the right things are appearing in the UI and so on. And yeah, since we implemented that, it become really kind of a favorite thing that is quick to use and like surprisingly convenient. It's leveraging Spring Security. So yeah, just so you know, in case it doesn't work in your application and you don't have Spring Security.
Yeah, I maybe kind of forgot to mention the Control Center side, that the Control Center is also the whole authentication there is built on Spring Security, so automatically integrated with Spring Security. So these both integrate together without you writing any code for it.
Yeah, and yeah, as said, it's kind of when you're developing, it's sometimes a bit irritating to kind of, when you don't have the production database, you need to kind of set up something so you can log in and so on. Now you potentially don't have to do that in the same way. The next thing I'm going to show here is just let's do something here. Whatever. So I'm asking the AI to change this text here, just to show you that now we have this little pop-up. So the first, or until you check the "Don't ask me again" button, whenever AI is going to be used, it will ask you for permission. We have also been adding these little icons throughout the UI where you can see that this might be using AI as a hint. So now I can cancel this or I can let it go ahead. So no need to change the thing. So a little bit you can kind of decide if you want to use AI or not. And because AI is so integrated into Copilot, it can be hard to know when it's used or not. Now you get the pop-up so you know exactly when.
There is also, if you want to decide whether the rest of the team is using AI or not, we also have like a centralized management feature in Vaadin Premium where you can basically decide if you give permission to anybody in the team to use AI or block it from everybody.
Yeah, so that's a team-wide feature, and kind of you can decide for the whole team to not use AI. And this pop-up is kind of the personal version of that, where you can every developer themselves can decide. And you can also, as you can see here, you can toggle it on and off in the settings and see what you have set there. Yes. Next up is maybe the main thing we have been working on. And now we're rolling out code and kind of the first features regarding this. So that's custom component support. And what we mean with custom components, and this is for Flow for now. So what we mean is components and composites that you have in your project that you want to use in your views. So in this instance, I have an Acme card because the card component is not available for Flow yet. So I've made my own. And now you can clearly see that this is a separate component. These all are instances of that. And if we look at I'm going to pop out the outline here. So I can also kind of, you can see my Acme cards here. And I don't kind of accidentally edit them now because I'm kind of seeing it as one component. If I want to edit the file, I can drill down by double clicking. And now you can see that I'm actually in the Acme card Java file, editing that. So now the point is that I don't accidentally change something. So this silly text here is not set in these components, so they are showing the one from the class, so I can edit it here, and then it changes in all the instances. And that's what you want to be, why you want to have this feature, so you don't accidentally change everything in your whole application. You can kind of edit the component when you want to edit the component. You can edit the view when you want to edit the view. So yeah.
Are there any limitations on what type of components you can recognize?
We hope not, but there are limitations on what you can do with them. So there's a million ways you can set up custom components and composites in Java. So this is kind of the first step, and we would very much like to have feedback on kind of how it works for you and what you would need more. So for instance, I can show here, my component here has kind of an API, so I can set some parts of it here. So if I drag in, if my Chrome would work, it's a little bit fidgety here with the streaming setup. So with any luck, hello, if I can drag something in here, no, my Chrome is not reacting to drops for the moment. Then we do it another way. Let's just grab something out of the panel. So let's say we grab a heading here and drop it on the component. When I drop, it's very hard to know where the drop zones are, like where will this end up? So the first step we have done is when I drop something on a component that we don't know kind of how to use, we detect the API and you can choose where you want this thing to end up. So, well, of course, that didn't work because I dropped something I shouldn't have in the wrong place. But what I wanted to show was, yes, it's a live demo. I wanted to show that to you. Let me just undo stuff here. Oh, it did something really interesting. And it needs a redeploy.
So
sometimes hot swap does if things stops working, hot swap might not have been able to import the thing. And then,
while redeploying, Curtis have a good question about would it be possible to see the code of these components and how they differ from custom fields?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not, this is any component. So my Acme card here is, I think, let's check, it's a composite, but it could be anything.
Can you show the code, or is it easy to switch the screen?
No, that's not very easy. We can, but I don't.
Okay.
I'm sharing my browser, so. But anyway, it's not like a special component. We have been thinking about making it so that if you build a component in a specific way, then we can identify drop zones and you get more information. For now, it's just any component you have outside of the view here will show up in this way. So it doesn't matter if it extends vertical layout or if it's a composite and so on. So if it's a component and I can use it, then it should show up in this way. And this is kind of the first steps we are taking, and we would be very interested, as I said, to hear if you find kind of limitations to this. Yes. The last thing I wanted to show about the custom components is actually you can also add the thing to the palette. So if I choose, I have a custom component here, like an external to the view, I can add it to the palette here. And if we go and check out the palette, let's pop it out. Scroll all the way to the bottom. It showed up here now. You can also edit this. So you can kind of choose which icon you want it to have. You can choose the name, so you can have, several different variations of stuff and so on. Yeah, so you can then you can use this in kind of other views and so on. So now it's in the palette and will be remembered.
And the next question would be that, hey, when I can share this custom palette with my team?
Yes, you can share it with the project right now, and the idea is to make that like that's the absolute first step now. And as we're going forward, we are going to make it in so you can have kind of your own favorite components, but you can have this shared kind of almost like a design system with your team that can be project based or kind of separately if you have a company wide thing. But this is kind of the first step with that as well. Yes, moving forward, maybe we skip to this thing here.
Do you, Mark, want to take the follow-up question from Curtis? Just asking,
Shoot.
what does the Acme card extend? Is it custom field or is it something else?
It's custom component. So no, wait, like a composite, and it's a div in this case. So
basically anything can be a custom component. Whatever.
Yeah, anything
we are
that-
not kind of restricting you to only
anything-
extend some specific thing.
anything that is a component, so it should extend a component. But yes,
Sounds good.
hope that clarifies a little bit. Yes. So some data. This is a flow view right now to keep these features a little bit separate. I have a combo box. There's now a thing here that's set data. I can connect to a service. So if I have a service set up in my project, I can easily get data into that. We have the same thing for the grid. And as you can see here, I can also create a new data type. So I don't know, customer. And we have this little thing here where you can configure the fields of the entity that it will create and connect. If you're lazy like me, you can use AI. So typical customer fields. Now it's going to ask me again if I want to use AI. And then it uses AI to kind of generate a bunch of stuff, so I don't have to think myself, or I can now kind of adjust those. So you can, if you have an existing thing, you could connect to that, or if you want to create a new one, it's a convenient way to at least get started and get all those pieces set up that you need. Moving forward, this is kind of the same thing, but for Hilla. So we have the combo box again. You can connect it to a service. We have the grid here. You can connect it to a service. You can also set example data, and this is kind of handy when you're building some demo quickly. So you get something that looks like real data in whatever you're working on. So I can just kind of, there's a whole bunch of things here. I don't know. Down here we have a chart, and same thing. You have example data. So I can find something that kind of looks like whatever I'm trying to achieve. So those are pretty handy when you're kind of building out your UI and just want it to look a little bit like the real thing, and then you wire them up to the real data. Next, just a quick word about panels. They work in a better way now, so you don't have this scrolling thing with the panels we call this side thing here a drawer, and these are panels. If I open a thing, it now takes more space here and everything stays on the screen. It's a little bit easier to operate. And while we're here, I'm going to show, you might have seen this already, but we haven't really kind of made any noise about it. So you can create a new view from here, and we have these templates you can use and then set access control and so on. So it's really easy to create new views. And then one thing I wanted to show is a small but convenient thing is the upgrade helper here. So in the info panel, you have this upgrade thing here. You can see which version I'm on. And if I click that, I have pre-releases enabled. My version is otherwise up to date, but I can see all the pre-releases here. And if I click that button, it will update my POM and I will get the new version. So that's pretty convenient to kind of stay up to date and track releases. Yes. How are we on time? I can maybe show just one little convenience thing. So if I enable DevTools now, now Copilot is no longer interfering with you using DevTools. So I can kind of select elements here. When you go, and this is in Chrome, when I go into DevTools, it takes away the Copilot things that were previously in the way. So I can kind of select stuff from the DevTools more easily now. Ooh, yes. And I think kind of those were the main things that planned to go through. Do we have any other questions or anything we should dive deeper into?
Maybe like generic observation. As you can see, there start to be amazing amount of functionality in Copilot. So I hope people are more excited than confused on this. So please try it out and share feedback and how you feel about about the Copilot in general. Is it a good direction that we really keep the code first, but are now building up this tool that helps you to write that code?
Yeah, one thing you should mention maybe, so you might notice all kinds of small changes that I didn't point out. And Copilot, since it's not like the framework, it's not yet deployed into your product or anything. We tend to kind of roll out these small improvements all the time with kind of new minor releases and so on. So, or patch releases even. So there's a lot of small convenience features and things adjusted as we get feedback and as we realize that, oh, this doesn't work well. So, but those were kind of the main things we wanted to kind of highlight in this release.
Good stuff. Thanks, Mark. And next up, we've got the Modernization toolkit. And with Modernization toolkit, we're focusing especially on Vaadin 7 related functionality with a goal of making it as easy as possible for one to migrate from Vaadin 7 to the most recent, be it Vaadin 24.7 or whatever release is in your interest. So lots of good things were introduced in this release with that regard, especially on the component and the API side. And what we basically did was we went through all the most common use cases based on our knowledge on how our customers have done the migration, what kind of components they've been using, what kind of APIs they've been accessing the most. And we really focus on those ones to try to nail it down and make this release as impactful as possible. And we feel quite confident that migration from Vaadin 7 is going to be somewhat nice ride to get to the latest release. So I highly encourage you to try it out, test how it looks like in your use case by using the analyzer that we have. You can choose either to use Maven or Eclipse plugin, which makes it really easy to actually analyze your code base and get the results. So you get to see if you were to go through the migration, how would it look like? So that gives you a really good understanding on where you are today and how the migration journey might look like for you. But as we said in the beginning, we are going to do some deep dive webinars on certain topics, and Modernization Toolkit is a really good candidate for a deeper dive webinar. And for that reason, we are not going to get too deep in this topic in this session.
But I guess the kind of summary of that is no reindeer left behind. So we really want to kind of help you guys who are, for some reason, still stuck with Vaadin 7 or Vaadin 8 to get to the latest and greatest. So for the webinar, a really good way to prepare there is to just download the MTK analyzer, run it with your code base, see what the statistics look like, and come to the webinar and ask tough questions. And we try to help you in there.
Well said, Jonas. All right.
No, Mika, the no reindeer left behind will be our new tagline for the modernization.
We'll use that. All right. We are almost at the bottom of the hour. We still do have time for some questions, and I'm just browsing through the questions that we have here. And guys, feel free to pick up any if you've noticed that we've missed any.
I mean, we have been cheating and answering lots of the questions in the chat also, but I think some of them could also be good to actually get recorded in the video.
Yes.
Maybe the one about Vaadin 25 is a relevant one, at least to get wide coverage for.
Yeah, so we are now, as you can see, we are working with very small features right now, and we are prepping for a Vaadin 25 release in the end of the year. And this is one driver is that really want to align this with Spring Boot 4 and everything related in there. But that also kind of drives new cool functionalities in there. I'm especially excited about a new theme or theming mechanism that we are preparing. We call it Aura. And that might make Vaadin, your next Vaadin application looking much more cool than the current one.
Yeah. One specific thing to mention there, Java 25 is mentioned in the question. We will still keep supporting Java 17, but there will also be support for Java 5, so there's no need to upgrade, but you can still do that if you want.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it's kind of fun to see Vaadin 25 coming out in 2025, while Vaadin the company turns to 25 years old, and even Java is thinking to be releasing Java 25. So it's like a 25-year this year. Hey, one thing I wanted to mention is that we'll be getting quite a bit better in maintaining transparent open roadmaps. So if you want to see what's in the roadmap, maybe Mika, you could share my screen. So you can always go to platform and roadmap. We have had this roadmap page for a long time. It's maybe better updated right now, but there's also a link to GitHub, and it goes to a GitHub board that shows all the next upcoming releases, including what are the planned features for each one of these. These are real tickets, so you can dive into these. You can look at the previous releases as well, like this one in here, so you can get quickly an overview what were the features in there in a bit more detailed level, maybe a easier to read level as well compared to what we have in the release notes. And if you want to see them all, there is the long list of things that we have been maintaining the roadmap. But this is the master that we use internally. It's being updated on the daily basis, so this should be the best picture of what's coming up next.
Cool. I noticed we have also one question here that we haven't addressed yet.
Yes and no is the answer to that question. Yes, it's a set, but it's actually a linked hash set that preserves the order in which the items have been selected. So the first selected item is guaranteed to be first if you iterate that set. At the same time, I know sometimes you want to instead have the selection in the order that things are kind of visually shown in the grid, so that the topmost row that is selected is first, and so on. We kind of had this debate that we can only support one or the other, which one is more useful, and then we concluded that selection order is neither is good, but that one is kind of slightly better, because you can always go back to the database to get the actual ordering for how things are shown.
While my screen happens to be still live in here, wanted to kind of note one more fairly big change that we did is that now when you create a new Vaadin application, we made the workflow easier. So you land with this kind of create a starter project where you can just download a project, and it can actually generate you views in both Flow and Hilla that are like full stack from the database, to give you an example how to kind of wire everything together. And not only that, we also have a refresh the documentation. So now it really walks you through how to build Vaadin applications. So it's way more specific, and it aligns with this new way to create a Vaadin application. So if you haven't taken a look of the documentation in the past 48 hours, have a peek. It's quite a bit refreshed.
Cool. Let's take a few more questions, even though we are 1 minute over time, just so that we get these covered. So this one is for Leif.
Oh, thank you again. So J-specify, that's the new kind of de facto standard for nullability annotation. So a way of telling that this field or parameter or something might be null, and this one is definitely not null. We added in 24/7 support for Hilla to use that when generating corresponding TypeScript, because there it's quite essential that nullability is kind of propagated in the same way. When it comes to Flow, to my knowledge, there is no feature in Flow where this would directly impact anything. The one related thing is validation annotations with the bean validation binder, but those also in Hilla are not even using J-specify. It's because that's about validating your data. It's not about the format of your data. So I'm not aware of anything missing, but if you have ideas, then please open a ticket.
All right. And with that, I think we are good to say thank you. But before we leave, I really want to encourage everyone to join the discussion at Vaadin Forum. So vaadin.com/forum. And I can see in the discussions here, many have been asking for the source code. Maybe Mark, you can create a new post entry in the forum with the source code shared, so everyone gets to enjoy it. All righty. So thank you all. I thought this was a really pleasant session. Thanks for our presenters, Jonas, Mark, and Leif. Thank you for your participation.
Yourself,
really, and me. Yeah, sure.
You need to be thanking yourself as well.
Yeah. It's been great fun. And yeah, looking forward to see you in our next webinar in 2 weeks on April the 9th, where we will go through all the exciting latest additions to our design system, all the cool and fancy UI components. See you there. Take care. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Keep in touch.